Like my father always says, if it's free, it's for me. Books are strange creatures because they're simultaneously essential for the readers who love them and inessential because you won't die without them, no matter how much it feels like you might. It's no secret that things are outrageously expensive these days, and some people are struggling to afford groceries, never mind a new $30 hardcover. So, what is a broke reader to do? Scour the internet for free books, of course. So today I've compiled a list of every resource that I know of that offers both free and ethical books for readers so you never have to sacrifice the life of the mind for the economy again. First up, let's talk about apps, of which there are several. First up is of course Libby, the library app to rule them all. Simply punch in your library card credentials and you can access your library's entire digital collection of ebooks, audiobooks, and magazines straight from your phone or send them directly to your Kindle. Libby operates in essentially the same way as your physical library, because it's an extension of your physical library, in that it offers wait lists, holds, and loan limits that vary between branches. Unlike other apps on this list, Libby allows you to enter multiple library cards if you're a member of multiple library systems, and you can switch between them easily. Libby's offerings depend entirely on the library you're connected to. Some are going to have vast digital options, for example, the New York Public Library, and others are going to be much smaller, much more limited, and have longer wait times. And that leads us to a Libby alternative called Hoopla. Hoopla is another app that connects to your library where you can access ebooks, audiobooks, magazines, as well as some music, movies, and TV shows. Where Hoopla differs from Libby is in how their library works. Hoopla curates its own collection, unlike Libby, which depends on the ebooks and audiobooks that your library already owns. On Hoopla, you can borrow up to 8 titles a month, and there are never any wait lists, so that solves that problem. Although my borrowing limit is 8, I've heard others say theirs is 10. That might differ between libraries, I'm not positive. My library offers access to both Libby and Hoopla, and in addition to the popular titles, the classics, the new releases that Libby has, I found that Hoopla also carries more titles from small independent presses as well as indie authors, so if that's something you're interested in, Hoopla might be more your option. Though I do prefer using Libby, I think their interface is just cleaner and smoother, easier to use. They complement each other well, and Hoopla does stand on its own perfectly fine. In fact, I would say Hoopla is preferable if you're interested in the super bestseller book talk titles, your Sarah J. Maas's, your Colleen Hoover's, because of the fact that there's never a wait list, whereas on Libby, you're going to be waiting forever. Finally, we have a little app that I just discovered recently called Palace, short for the Palace Project. Palace is very similar to Hoopla in the sense that you connect to your local library to access ebooks and audiobooks, but with Palace, even if your library doesn't offer it, you can still access the Palace Project's own digital collection, which is made up largely of classic and public domain text as well as government texts from the Digital Public Library of America. Palace is a newer app and my library does not offer access to it, so I couldn't go too deep into its inner workings. However, scrolling through the list of libraries that do offer the app, it seems as though it's a lot of smaller library branches that might not offer Libby or Hoopla, so if you don't have access to the previous two, do inquire whether your library offers the Palace Project, because there's a chance it does. But real quick, if you found these resources helpful so far, do consider hitting the subscribe button. This is Thought Couture, I'm Kelsey Jo, and I publish new videos just about every week on book recommendations, reviews, creative writing content, and now bookish commentary and chats like these. In addition to our local libraries, there are such things as online libraries, which are exclusively digital collections available to anyone with an internet connection. If you're a big fan of the Libby app experience, I do know of 3 online libraries that connect to it. They are the Queer Liberation Library, the Japan Foundation Library, and the Literature Translation Institute of Korea. Clearly, each of these libraries has its specific niche, namely queer literature, Japanese literature and culture, and Korean literature and culture, literature. But if you have any interest in those things, I highly recommend these. I found them to be great resources for those topics, but also just to diversify your bookshelves and your reading. All of these libraries have sign-up forms on their website. They will be linked down below, and each of them took 30 seconds maximum. The Queer Liberation Library is available in the US only, the Japan Foundation is only in the US and Canada, and then the Korean Translation Institute is available internationally, so just so you know. As for online libraries that don't connect to Libby, there are many, the OG being Project Gutenberg. Project Gutenberg has a giant catalog of over 70,000 ebooks available entirely for free to read online or on your e-reader. Of course, they focus on books in the public domain, so they are largely older classic works. However, their range is still vast, covering fiction, children's lit, language instruction, philosophy, music, social sciences, and much more. Gutenberg is of course fantastic for filling your e-reader with all those classics you've been meaning to read, but it's also just a ton of fun to browse and see what jumps out at you. For example, if you want to read the meeting notes of the Northern Nut Growers Association UK, and they're available for you. If you want to read a whole bunch of books about witchcraft, you're all set. And my personal favorite find on Gutenberg so far, are women people? The world may never know. The jury's still out on that one. Now, if audiobooks are more your thing, you should know about librivox. In a similar vein to Project Gutenberg, librivox offers a massive catalog of nearly 20,000 public domain works read entirely by volunteers. Their books are largely fiction, nonfiction, and poetry, as opposed to the magazines and the references of Project Gutenberg, but still, again, their variety is wide, including children's lit, poetry anthologies, and non-English and translated texts. Because librivox audiobooks are read by volunteers, you're going to have some variations in quality. However, I believe they do have moderators and proof listeners who check every recording for quality and accuracy. I've never had any problems, and I think they're all quite good, generally speaking. Finally, we have Open Library, which is part of the Internet Archive and aims to create a web page for every book ever published. Now, Open Library doesn't work in quite the same way as a Gutenberg and librivox. It's closer to a traditional library in the sense that you're able to borrow titles for a short period of time, starting with 1 hour and going up to 14 days, and you can only read the books in the Open Library website. I hesitated to include this one because it is hit or miss on whether you'll be able to access the book you're looking for, especially if it's not in the public domain. But unlike the previous two libraries, they do offer some newer releases you may have trouble accessing through your own library. Some titles do have wait lists, but they're typically much shorter than you would find on Libby, so I do think it's at least worth knowing about. Now maybe you're thinking, Kels, these are all great, but I'm not really a classics person. I want the contemporary lit. I want the new stuff. For obvious reasons, it is nearly impossible to find the brand new releases for free outside of your library. However, it is possible if you're open to advanced reader copies or advanced review copies, also known as ARCs. Essentially, ARCs are copies of new books released prior to publication for marketing purposes. Publishers will send them to booksellers, librarians, literary publications, and individual book reviewers who will be able to promote the books before they're released to the public. You too can receive ARCs, however, it does require at least a little bit of a social media presence if you're not an industry professional. This doesn't have to be huge, and things like Goodreads reviews and Amazon reviews count too. You don't have to be a giant book influencer by any means. I'm not, and I get plenty of ARCs, but you will need at least a little bit of a following to promote to, and the requirements vary between publishers. Far and away, the best and easiest place to get ARCs is a site called NetGalley, because pretty much every publishing house is on there and the application process is really simple. There are no requirements to make an account. You just fill out a profile of your literary interests, Write up a bio and link your social media pages. Publishers will look at this profile when you apply to review a book, as well as the ratio of how many books you reviewed to how many you've been offered. My pro tip for NetGalley, especially if you're a newer reviewer or you have a small audience, is to really sell yourself as much as possible in the bio write-up section. I found that publishers care more about whether you're a good personality fit to review their books than how large your following is. Things like what kind of topics you enjoy reading about, whether you're part of a certain identity group, if you have an education or a professional background in writing and literature, etc. NetGalley also has a section called Read Now, which are ebooks that you don't have to apply for, you can read them immediately. These Read Now books are great in the beginning to build up your reviewer ratio and to prove to publishers that you do follow through on reviewing the arcs that you're given. Your next best arc option is a site called Edelweiss. Edelweiss is essentially the same thing as NetGalley, however it's geared more towards the industry professionals than the independent reviewers and influencers, although anyone can create an account on the community side of their website. Quick word of warning though, the Edelweiss platform is a lot. I've been on there since the beginning of this year, and I still have quite a difficult time navigating the website and figuring out where anything is, which is why I recommend starting with NetGalley. Otherwise, they do operate in the same way, in that you apply for books to review, wait for approval, and then review them when you're done. One benefit to Edelweiss, though, and why I kept it on this list despite its issues, is that they do seem to have a larger collection of the Read Now style arcs than NetGalley, just to really start your reviewing career without waiting on publisher approval. Also, unlike NetGalley, Edelweiss has a community section where non-professional users can join social groups based on genres and topics, as well as create book lists, kind of like Goodreads and their group and list system. Again, the interface is confusing and sometimes glitchy, but it's absolutely worth checking out if you really want to stay up to date on all the new releases and the goings-on in the publishing industry. And finally, while it is significantly easier to find free digital books than physical, it is possible, it just takes a little bit more patience and legwork. Literally, because the first place we're going to check are little free libraries. Now, maybe I'm slow on the uptake, which is generally true of most things, but I only recently realized just how common these little free libraries are. Even in my area, which is not a very big city, you're pretty much always within walking distance of one. Of course, your options are based entirely on what your community members have put in the box, but I find that kind of exciting because you never know what gems you might find. That said, at least in my experience, I find they tend to be filled largely with children's and young adult lit, so I personally haven't had very much luck, but if that's something you're interested in, or if you're looking for children, then this can be a great resource. I love little free libraries too, because they're a give and take system. They offer an easy and responsible way to get rid of books you no longer want to own, but more importantly, it's a way of supporting your immediate local community and giving back, and I just think that's really nice. Similar to little free libraries, but not requiring you to leave your couch, are Buy Nothing groups. Hosted on either Facebook or the Buy Nothing app, these are local to you community groups where users can post offers for items they are giving away for free or requests for items they're looking for. So someone near you might be offering up books they no longer want, and you can inquire whether anyone happens to have a copy of a specific title that you want. Again, your options are limited to whatever books your neighbors happen to have on them, but I've found my local Buy Nothing group is much more fruitful than I ever would have anticipated. A few years ago, one of my community members offered up a whole box of random books they wanted to part with, and that is how I ended up with an edition of The Diary of Virginia Woolf, several Willa Catherine novels, and this fascinating tome about biblical women. I've also seen round-robin style offerings in my group, basically a box of books that travels throughout the community. You take what you want and put in what you want to give away, move on to the next person, and it continues. Basically a traveling little free library. And last but most certainly not least, we have a hidden gem that I'm tempted to keep a secret, but I'm nice, so I won't, called Paperback Swap. This is exactly what you would expect based on the name, a marketplace where users swap books with each other. Simply browse the current offerings or search for specific titles and request it if it's available. If the book's not available, you can add it to a wish list and you'll be notified when someone posts it. Now, to be perfectly clear about Paperback Swap, it is free to request books up to a point, but there are some limitations and paid options. First off, if you send one of your own books to another user, you do have to pay for shipping because the sender always pays. You also have the option of signing up for a PBS membership, which will allow you to request more free books than the free plan, keep a longer wish list, and request multiple copies of the same book. The basic membership starts at $12 a year, or $1 a month, and the premium membership is just $20 a year. I don't currently have a membership with them. I have other reading I need to do that I overwhelmed myself with, but I have for several years in the past. I've always stuck with the $12 yearly plan, and I think it's absolutely worth it. I know I've saved a lot of money swapping books here rather than buying them new or even used. In fact, according to the site, I've saved exactly $45.21. So for $12 a year, it's paid for itself multiple times over. Of course, again, your options on Paperback Swap depend on who's offering what at what time, but I've found that pretty much every book I could be looking for ends up on the site eventually. Again, just take some patience. Well, that is it for me today. I hope at least a few of these free book options have captured your interest. I hope also that you find every book you're looking for and even a few you weren't. If you enjoyed this video, I think you'll really enjoy the video that inspired this one about why stealing from libraries is bad. As always, thank you so very much for watching. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one.